Hey everyone, it's Dr. Russell, and today we're doing my fourth and final video on anxiety and tips for anxiety. So if you haven't watched the other three, please go back and do so. We covered supplements, herbs, and different lifestyle considerations for anxiety. But today I wanted to touch on some other things that might be contributing to anxiety that maybe, are things you haven't evaluated for and might be helpful. And three relate to nutrition and food, and then a couple others are, extra things to consider for anxiety. So let's just start with nutrition since that's the bulk of what I have to talk about today. So the first consideration to think about is something that is very, I don't say controversial, but very emotional for a lot of people to even consider giving up or taking a break from, and that is coffee. So we have this very strong tie to coffee in this culture, and coffee, it really is a drug, it's a stimulant, so it makes sense that there is that kind of addictiveness or quality to it. It is very comforting. I do enjoy coffee as well. But sometimes your tolerance to coffee or what it does to your system can change over time, especially if there are hormone imbalances or other things going on. The amount of coffee that you've been drinking might not have the same effect or have different effects on you, than it did maybe a few years ago. So one thing, if you are drinking coffee, is to consider, I'm just saying consider, giving yourself a break for a couple weeks and kind of seeing how you feel. So, definitely the way to go about this would be to kind of taper down cold turkeying while you can do that. Usually will end up in headaches and you feeling pretty crappy for a few days. So the idea, tapering, add some more decaf or use a product like Ticino or Dandy Blend, a non-coffee alternative to caffeine. Nothing's exactly like coffee, but it has a similar body to it and flavor. And to see if that helps reduce that level of anxiety overall. So again, some people's sensitivity to it just can change over time. If your enzymes in your liver that help process coffee are maybe overwhelmed because of other things going on in your body, again with hormone imbalance, it might just be a really simple consideration to just reduce that coffee. And again, I usually recommend, a couple weeks just going off of it completely and then bringing it back in and bringing a little in at a time to see how you do. Personally, I do this every couple times a year probably, and I found over time, sometimes I can only come back to a quarter calf of a cup versus other times maybe a half of a cup or more can be, I don't have the same effects from it. So it's definitely coffee. If you're feeling anxious, let's just figure out if coffee is a big trigger. The second thing to consider is food sensitivity or food allergy. So a lot of times there are common allergens like gluten and soy and dairy and eggs, all the good stuff, and sugar and all the good things that people might develop a sensitivity to. And again, same with coffee, these are things that can change over time. So maybe a food that used to be okay for you, just over time, you've developed a sensitivity to it for, a variety of reasons. So same idea, maybe give up the top allergens or kind of evaluate maybe just even writing for a week, what you're eating and when you feel anxious and seeing if you can identify any foods that are causing that trigger. I know for me personally, gluten gives me anxiety or anxiety-like symptoms. So not saying that I avoid it completely, though I do for the most part, but if I do have it, we have holidays coming up and there's always birthdays and fun things like that. When I eat it and I feel anxious after, have those anxiety-like symptoms, I just know this is from gluten and I'm not really anxious. It's just this effect from the food. So something to think about. A lot of people don't realize how strong of an impact food can have on your mood. It can play a big role in that. So that's the second nutritional tip to think about. And the third is something that I think everyone's aware of, but we don't really kind of think about it until we step back, and that is possible hypoglycemia. So do you find that a few hours after you eat, that you start feeling anxious and those symptoms start kicking in? And are you eating more carb-based foods, or you're meals not as balanced? Do you not have good proteins and fats to help balance those carbohydrates in your meals? So just pay attention to, again, if you're eating and then maybe a couple hours later you feel symptoms of anxiety, and then if you eat again, do those symptoms go away? Possibly there's a role of hypoglycemia going on, and that might be one of the causes of anxiety or triggers. So those are 3 nutritional things to consider when you think about anxiety. The 4th thing I want to talk about relates more to supplements, what we talked about in the first week, and that has to do with methylation. And that is just a really fancy sounding term for kind of how your genes, in some instances, mutations in genes can affect your ability to use certain vitamins. So for some people, we think of B vitamins as good for energy and mood and all this stuff. But if you're not getting the right type of B vitamins, the ones that are more available for the body to use, and you have this genetic mutation, that can cause problems. Or if you have the genetic mutation, and the one I'm referring to for those people that are aware, the MTHFR mutation is one of them. So you have that. For some people, even using the methylated or more available forms of the B vitamins can make it worse if you don't know how to dose it correctly, or if there are other genetic considerations going on. So maybe just think back to, okay, I started this B complex or, B vitamins that were supposed to be more activated and methylated. And then my anxiety just really seemed to get worse. So maybe there is a genetic component going on that you need maybe more assistance from someone that's trained to kind of help with that. So just think of timing. Sometimes for everyone, those more activated vitamins are not the best, and it really just depends on dosing. So that's another consideration, more nuanced, but more and more people are becoming aware of things like MTHFR, which is great. And then the last thing to consider that sometimes I get pushback from people, even today, which is surprising, is counseling. And counseling is an amazing tool, and I think more and more people have been doing it, especially this year. And I think hopefully there's less stigma around counseling, and it's not that there's something wrong with you or you're broken or you're crazy and that's why you need it. I think of counseling as someone that can help provide you tools to kind of help overcome things or see patterns that you didn't notice before. We get so caught up in living, it's sometimes hard to take a step back and realize, okay, every time this situation happens, I feel triggered, and that's causing me to feel symptom of anxiety, or I feel powerless, or, this reminds me of a previous situation, just subconsciously I didn't put those together. So, there's many different styles of counseling. I always joke that, it's kind of like dating. Like you got to find the right counselor for you. So if you've been in counseling before and it maybe wasn't helpful, try a different counselor, try a different style of counseling. I mean, there's so many different styles you can try and different counselors out there. Don't give up until you find one that works for you. And I can say I've been in counseling myself for I don't know how many years now, but it's been really, really helpful in improving my, outlook on things, my relationships, letting me pause and stop before I react to things, just because of understanding more of, okay, that's triggering from this. But again, there's nothing wrong with getting counseling and getting some help when you need it. And it's not as though you need to go for forever. Maybe it's just an issue you need to work through and spend so many sessions on and kind of come back to if you feel like you still need it down the road. So, we can't, there's no problem with getting extra support right now when it's needed. And I think counseling is a great tool if it's something you haven't considered for anxiety. So those are my other considerations for anxiety. And obviously there's tons more we could talk about, but I wanted to go with kind of the top most common things I see. So again, for nutrition, we've got coffee. Just consider giving it a little break for a little bit and seeing if that helps. Food sensitivities, and then hypoglycemia. Again, are you noticing your symptoms worsen, a couple hours after meals, and then when you eat again, you feel better? Then methylation, if that's maybe a consideration, MTHFR, maybe you're not getting the methylated supplement, or is that actually aggravating things because you have other genetic issues going on? And then counseling. Again, we can't have enough tools when it comes to supporting yourself in anxiety. So hopefully the past 4 weeks, these videos have been helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or other things you'd like to discuss. And then at the time of this recording, Next week will be the election on Tuesday. So I'm actually going to do a bonus video for the day after the election on a little meditation to help everyone. So it doesn't matter what side you're on. It's just really going to give you a little bit of peace, since I don't think the election is going to be over on election day. And if you don't care about politics, that's great. One less thing to worry about. So, we're going to talk about, again, just really a good meditation, a good way to kind of to pause and bring yourself some peace when it comes to anxiety. So again, hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys next week for a bonus meditation for anxiety.